Okay, so Deltarune Chapter 5 came out recently. I don't know what to think about it. On one hand, it's the most fun chapter to play out of the others. The platform mechanic is stellar and the boss fights are super fun. But on the other hand, it's got so many weird writing and narrative issues that kind of pissed me off. But the strangest thing about this chapter was mostly how it's dark world compared to the setup done in the previous chapter. Mr. Gerson Boom himself, who wrote a book based on the prophecy, told us that we would be venturing into a field of pink and gold. And also that a garden would be charred in an inferno of jealousy, which just didn't happen whatsoever. Pink and gold, pink and gold. I have a friend who looks like that. Yeah, he's obsessed with a stupid black cat. Friend, image_friend, device_friend, whatever you want to call it, is the Deltarune fandom's favorite villain that hasn't actually done anything yet. I'm sure if you're watching this video, you already have an approximation of what this thing is, but just in case, here's a brief explanation. Inside Queen's basement in Chapter 2, eagle-eyed players could see this face stalking in the darkness, with it fading away immediately upon coming on screen. Data mining the game revealed the texture for this ugly mug to be called image_friend, and the object that controls it being device_friend. Interestingly, these prefixes are tied with WD Gaster activity, due to them commonly being used for the more meta parts of the game. I really hope you know who Gaster is, because that warrants a whole explanation on its own. This implies that friend exists beyond the bounds of the game world, and in fact, most of its setup happens in mediums outside of the game. A few pages on the Deltarune website implies that it's a cat, or otherwise related to the Cat Pedders game, which renders its cat as a bunch of circles stuck together. So people believe that this pointed tail made out of circles that is so frequently brought up in Chapter 4 belongs to Friend. And this guy talks some scrambled message about poor children following the pointed tail deep into a forest. Chris, Noel, Asriel, and December like to go into the forest together looking for cryptids. Des is missing. Uh-oh. So yeah, this guy might be a child abductor behind one of the game's central mysteries. Might be. Despite having eyes the same color as Phantom's glasses, which is made even weirder about the latter's outfit being supposed to imitate Swatch, and multiple other unrelated things in the game, Friend doesn't do anything or be mentioned by anyone. It shows up briefly in a chapter and then disappears for the rest of it. Unless it's Chapter 3 for some reason, then he gets like 3 different appearances. But despite having less combined screen time than a Rudden, the fandom has really latched onto this creature. At least one person thinks it's responsible for any strange event you can imagine. There are a ton of fan concepts for a boss fight against Friend, and just showing a Deltarune fan an image of something pink next to something yellow is enough to make them actually flip out. Man, this Friend stuff is really annoying. I'm gonna listen to some Tommy February 6 to cool off. So now that we're all up to speed on the seemingly very important character, let me tell you about how I don't think it's an actual character. I know that sounds bad. I've just been starting to think that with Chapter 5 quite literally taking place in a field of pink and gold, but not featuring any substantial Friend appearances, the character might just not be what people think it is. To put it plainly, I don't think Friend is just one guy secretly pulling the strings behind the scene. Rather, it's a whole species of weird creatures meant to carry out Gaster's bidding. In other words, they're Goombas! They're fucking Goombas! Now, I don't want this to be true. Maybe just so that nobody finds my good pal sub hanging from a noose, but also just cause Friend has been so important to the community for actual years. And while I personally kinda don't care for all the Friend baiting, if this thing's introduction doesn't blow my mind into something else, I'm gonna be disappointed. But I just think it's way too late for Friend to insert itself into the story as its big driving force. And I've been looking back on all of its non-this appearances, and if it really is one big character, I just don't know what's up with them. Apparently it's an important character, but it's Deltarune's Panda Man. And at this point, this random normal NPC has done more for the plot than Friend. This is the last thing you see before getting slimed out in an alleyway and having your body fried and served to teenagers. Actually, hold on, before I talk about Friend, I just need to establish just how fucking funny it is that the Goner Bird killed Onion Song for knowing too much, just to cut up his corpse and give it away as food at the festival. And Noelle has the audacity to say she would rather have Soylent. This was supposed to just be a small video talking about Friend's lack of relevance, with the Goomba joke just being a bit. But as I did more research, it just became more and more plausible, and then Toby dropped a random patch practically confirming the Goomba aspect, and damn, I guess this is the theory video. I never thought I was knowledgeable enough to make one of these on such a lore-heavy game like Deltarune, and still don't think I am. I just had like 2 nights in a row where I was sitting in bed wondering if this stupid thing was even real, so I wanted to chronicle these thoughts online on the off chance that I end up being right. Also, I saw that someone else made the Friend Goomba joke, and that gave me the power I needed to actually open a Google Doc and actually start writing the script. Okay, so the scene in Chapter 3 where Ralsei explains how darkness work was kinda confusing. There's so much build-up as something we already knew since Chapter 1, and was shoved down our throats come Chapter 2. And then there's a completely random appearance of Friend at the very end. And the explanation itself is weird. It talks about how darkness are essentially the physical embodiment of how our minds play tricks on us while in the dark. While it makes sense, it's done in this really ominous fashion that makes the prospect seem way scarier than it really is. It's just a super tonally inconsistent way to describe fucking Tenna. At first, I thought it was just Chapter 3 writing, and then I wondered, This thought spawned from Ralsei's later explanation of the Titan, how it represented the fear of darkness itself. While that's definitely metaphorical and delivered in an extremely corny way, it made me think about darkness being born from more abstract concepts. After all, Ralsei's explanation for how darkness gained their form is merely your mind starts playing tricks on you in the dark, and when it gets ultra dark, these tricks become reality. That's supposed to emphasize how something innocuous can look monstrous in the dark. But haven't you had moments where, while your eyes were adjusting to the darkness, you saw a figure out of the corner of your eye and it's just nothing? Maybe, especially considering that friends seem to exist beyond the bounds of this world. Darkness don't have to be physical. I mean, when you're alone with nothing but your own thoughts, they start to eat away at you. There's an implication that Chris did something terrible that may be the reason of Death's disappearance, and later on before the Shadow Mantle fight, the only time we see friends actively spawn, the Mantle Holder is taunting Chris about how they're secretly a terrible person. I'm thinking these pink and gold friends manifest from Chris's grief or guilt being given physical form as darkness. And like, going back to the friend reveal, why the hell is it here? You don't just put the like secret villain secret secret in command. What the fuck did I just say? You don't just put the like secret villain secret second in command in your cutscene for what's essentially the first third of the game. And like, Deltarune is a very meta, lore heavy game where nearly every element is diegetic and every small thing should be analyzed. If Toby put friend here, it's because he thought that friend was the best representation of what Ralsei was conveying. I'm not building up to anything here, I just think there's no way this is how the game is formally introducing its big boss unless it isn't. And yeah, there's no objective reason this isn't friend, the single entity friend, but introducing such a big character as a weird sprite in a throwaway cutscene is so strange, unless it's supposed to be a setup for why it's going to show up later. And now that that's out of the way, let's bring up the most obvious thing, the friend enemies during the Shadow Mantle boss fight. There's always multiple of them. This may sound pedantic, because it is, but that would make it the only individual character to have more than one instance of themselves in the games. Every character that shows up multiple times in a board is either a generic enemy or part of a species of Darkner like the Pippins and Shadow guys, but friend has like 4 copies show up at the same time. This one's admittedly very flimsy. The Suzy and Ralsei sprites beforehand show that an entity sprite doesn't have to mean that they're there, but with everything we know about the games, and how these guys function identically to disposable enemies in the previous area, I feel it's good evidence. With those deranged ramblings aside, let's get into something even more deranged. There's something else I wanted to address. There's a weird version of the friend sprite with a miscolored eye. I mean, how does this happen? Was this a friend beta design somehow? Was it originally going to be magenta and gold and then Toby realized he could make a sick reference to Undertale? And then occasionally he just forget to use the final sprite? Well, I find it hard to believe that's the case, because it would mean that somehow nobody noticed that the character heavily linked to such an important palette in the game just didn't look like it. So, do you remember when FNAF 2 came out and people thought that these 2 purple guy sprites were 2 different murderers? Yeah, we're doing that again. Just consider this. This specific coloration first appeared in the Rare Cats page, which is based on an experience Noel had while playing a minigame in Cat Pedders. There is a strange cat that when clicked made her lose points, and in the Rare Cats page the magenta friend plays that exact same role. And this is the only time it has this coloration, until the mic fight in chapter 4 that is coincidentally also about this Cat Pedders minigame. So yeah, there are 2 friends now. I'm not sure exactly what these 2 types of friends are, but I think they both have different targets. The magenta friend is heavily associated with cat petters, with it always being around cats and whatnot, and by extension Noelle. It's a rare cat in the game that appeared only for her and an undisclosed other person. Since Noelle is so important for whatever reason, it's possible these are the friends meant to monitor her for something. And since it seemingly appeared inside Cat Pedders, a game where all of the cats are rendered as a bunch of circles, it's fair to say that this friend is the tail of hell, making it more connected to Noelle since it's presumably connected with Death's disappearance. I don't know why it's with Pluie, I don't know. I don't know. And on the opposite side, the pink and gold friends are targeting Chris. See, I'm half convinced that this color scheme isn't even friend's own thing. The 2 colors probably have some symbolic relation that goes beyond the demon cat's eyes. I'm flip-flopping whether on anything said by the 3 Musketeers holds any merit, but there's a line from one of them saying you see pink and gold and immediately think it's a friend, which kind of feels like a nudge that the pink and gold themselves are more important than who wore them first. Well, second. I mean, the colors end up relating far more closely to Chris's character than whatever Friends is. Spamton is a very clear parallel to Chris, who doesn't seem to reference Friend directly. I don't know, the one's up in the air now thanks to Toby Fox's magic lore patch. The odd controller, which has pink and gold buttons, is our gateway into the sword route that seems to target Chris's personal vulnerabilities. And then in chapter 5, Chris literally creates a dark world known as the Field of Pink and Gold, and the 2 pink and gold characters parallel them in certain ways. This is gonna be blasphemous, but the pink and gold eyes are more of a representation or mockery of Chris than Friend's calling card. What exactly they mean is a theory for another day, because I'm not too sure myself, but I'm just finding it hard to see this color palette and immediately think of this bum and not this bum. So while I think Cat Patter's friend has the tail of hell, this friend is the dog eating type thing we see in Ralsei's speech. Or maybe the friends can merge together to form one entity like how the Undertale enemy is. I think the slight color variation is just a byproduct of the whole no two dark worlds are the same thing. Chris and Noelle are looking at the same creature, but their different worldviews warp it slightly. Asriel is probably being tormented by a friendling of his own, and that one's like red and green or something. So yeah, that's everything I wanted to talk about. I know the idea of friend not being a singular entity is pretty out there and ridiculous, and the two friend thing is really pushing it. At this point what? Oh my fucking god, I was right! The previous parts of the script were written about a week before the Deltarune Chapter 5 version 0.0.247 patch released. I am extremely mad that I didn't get this video out in time, because at any time someone could claim that I made this entire thing up after reading the new dialogue, and I don't actually have any solid proof to say otherwise. So if you haven't seen, a recent update for Chapter 5 added a new piece of dialogue with Pink after you beat her. If you encounter the little friend of Mabob and collected the chapter's egg, her body will talk to Chris about a cat bite on their hand, mentioning someone she met who had a whole pack of ruthless cats who very aggressively chased protein. Cats, bite, protein, egg, hiding.
And Pink! So
Yeah, that's the most blatant friend baiting in this game so far, and apparently with the whole pack of them, Tricky Tony himself personally added this stupid random interaction to the game specifically so I can keep on calling friend a Goomba. And they like hunting protein. Eggs are a good source of protein, and for whatever reason, the eggs for chapters 3 and 4 have been heavily linked to some sort of trauma Chris has. But Frank can be seen stalking you even if you never got an egg in your playthrough. So what if they're going straight for the source? So yeah, I think that's everything I have that made me come up with this insane idea. I kinda just came up with it one night while in bed and thought it'd make a good core concept for a video talking about friend. And as I kept on researching to see if it actually held ground, I just kept on finding more and more ways to justify it until I actually started believing my disparaging joke of calling friend a Goomba. I don't know how I got here, I don't know how I'm staying here, this theory probably sucks, I hope Ralsei gets to stomp on all these stupid heads, Chris is a useless bum who can't tear a piece of paper, goodbye.